and has meaning. Each moment is meant to be experienced and cherished. Welcome to Anxiety Simplified Podcast. I'm Joanne Williams, and I'm going to share ways to refocus this anxiety energy to a more productive and effective way to go through life. You already have all the tools. I'll just remind you how to use them. We'll be tuning into your own power to choose and find more joy and peace. Let's get started remembering this wisdom.
Well, hello everyone. Merry Christmas or Happy Christmas wherever you may be. This is Joanne Williams for Anxiety Simplified. And we're going to talk today about 8 keys for forgiveness. And Christmas story of forgiving and resilience, why you should forgive, I think is the mistaken thing we've missed out on about Christmas. So I'm going to expand on that. How this year is really more forgiveness than gifts. So the summary of today's podcast is ways to celebrate Christmas with more love and forgiveness in your heart. How stress indicates that we are not letting go and how resilience can help this. 8 tools for simply forgiving self or others. And our question for the day, why should forgiveness be part of Christmas? Oprah Winfrey says, forgiveness is giving up the hope that the past could have been any different. It's accepting the past for what it was and using this moment and this time to help yourself move forward. So it's about you. So we've all had a year like no other in 2020 with multiple things going on, an election that some still think that's going on or have not let go of, and with authoritarian roots being exposed against our democracy. Who would think? A pandemic that seems like it will never end. Families with sick or dying family members around the holidays who, may have just come to a birthday party or a wedding and never thought people might die from COVID-19 for coming to a party. Social unrest that has thrown the blanket off of a long history of persistent and ugly battering of human rights in our America. Now, we have one of the most stressful months of the year with expectations of giving gifts and being merry, with businesses dying, unemployment soaring, and a supportive government. What? Where are they? Nowhere to be found. So where is this hope, the joys of the season? Can even Christmas music cheer us up from this one? We do have a choice to focus on all the bad things that are happening this year, to choose to look at ways to let go of the hurt, the heartache, and bounce back or bounce forward into a new year with or without COVID in the rearview mirror. Christmas in my childhood was kind of a complex time, probably like most people, happy and sad, or disappointment and joy. My family would travel 2 hours to stay with my grandparents and cousins for a traditional Christmas with the tree and lights. My father would turn up the car radio on the way to my grandparents' house to hear the Santa report of sightings. And we, the 4 kids, would look outside of the station wagon windows to look into the sky for Santa's sleigh. And we always seemed to see him. As we would drive past the smell of crude oil from the oil fields of Oklahoma. And the cousins played the piano and would sing Christmas carols, which my family really didn't sing or play we tried to play the piano, really didn't. But we shared and opened gifts on Christmas Eve in the German tradition and had one present from Santa to open in the morning. Sometimes all the kids would sleep on the floor of the dining room in sleeping bags and peep to see if Santa had come yet. And I remember an old saying my grandfather said, so that we wouldn't get too close to the fire. And the saying was, Silly Willy, curls and sashes, fell in the fire and burned to ashes. By and by the room grew chilly, but no one came to stir up Willie. That is such a troubling image for a child. Why would a sweet grandfather recite that saying to a young child? But that was the worry or the fear of bad things can happen at any moment. Instead of hearing reassuring words or comforting thoughts that your family will always be there for you, they've got your back. We remember things very vividly in childhood. They're emotionally connected to that part of the brain. How are your children hearing things this year? Or remember, what are they going to remember? Will they remember with pleasant memories or of fear and hearing their parents fighting over an election or of financial struggles or of unity, forgiveness, finding ways to bounce back with resilience and compassion with all the differing opinions, or even in your own family, and with reassurance and hope? Christmas is a tradition around the story of the birth of Jesus, the head of the Christian church, and believed to be the Son of God. His last words on the cross that killed him were, "Please, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." So when is forgiveness the focus of his holiday celebration? Question mark. I think we are confused, like Silly Willy. And somehow we fell in the fire of remembering those last words to be sharing around forgiving for his holiday. Not for giving gifts, but forgiving each other, ourselves, as the gift of the season. This year we need it, I think, more than ever. And here's some ways to forgive from an article of The Power of Forgiving by Dr. Taylor Vanderweel, co-director of the Initiatives of Health and Religion and Spirituality at Harvard's School of Public Health, and from Robert Enright's 8 Keys to Forgiveness. The power of forgiveness teaches us how to overcome lingering bad feelings towards somebody who did you wrong. Almost everybody has had experience being wronged by someone. It could be a former coworker, friend, or family. But hanging on to these negative feelings can do harm to your health. They may not even know any of this. Forgiving a person who has wronged you is never easy, but dwelling on these events and reliving them over and over again, does that sound familiar? Can fill your mind with negative thoughts and suppressed anger, according to Dr. Tyler Vanderweel. Yet, when you learn to forgive, you are no longer trapped by the past actions of others and can truly finally feel free. So, learning to let go. There's 2 sides to forgiveness, decisional and emotional. Decisional forgiveness involves a conscious choice to replace ill will with goodwill. Replace that thought with a forgiving thought. You no longer wish bad things happening to that person, says Dr. Van Wil. This is often quicker and easier to accomplish than the emotional forgiveness. Emotional forgiveness, you can move away from these negative feelings and no longer dwell on the emotions of the wrongdoing. Emotional forgiveness is much harder and takes longer, as it's common for those feeling to return on a regular basis, says Dr. Van Wel. These often happen when you think about the offender or something triggers the emotional memory for you, or you still suffer from adverse consequences from their action. This may need professional help if there was trauma involved in this event. Please reach out to learn more about letting go skills if it is post-traumatic stress disorder or PTSD. In podcast 26, I cover solutions and description of what post-traumatic stress disorder is. So I recommend you look at that number 26 podcast at Anxiety Simplified on iTunes or anxietysimplified.net. Practicing forgiveness can have powerful health benefits. Observational studies as well as randomized trial studies suggest that your forgiveness can have lower levels of depression, anxiety, hostility, reduced substance abuse, higher self-esteem. You feel better about yourself, and greater self-satisfaction. Yet, we know it's not easy. It's not that men can't forgive, but for some, it's more of a struggle, says Dr. Van Wel. It's not clear why. I have suspicions, but perhaps men have learned to suppress certain emotions, and I would agree. It also can be difficult for men to admit to themselves that there was this great offense. Maybe they, felt a little helpless, hopeless, and it still bothers them they weren't a man about it. Or this is my suspicion that if there was post-traumatic stress disorder in this, that there was any kind of trauma that they felt threatened their life to serious harm or somebody else, avoidance is one of the symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder. So please, please, please reach out. You can practice small acts of forgiveness. One way to get more comfortable with forgiveness is to practice small acts in your everyday life, says Dr. Van Wel. For example, if somebody is rude or cuts you off in traffic, use this as a moment to recognize the wrong. Yes, they did it. Realize it wasn't directed, though, at you personally, and forgive him or her on the spot. This way, you can also learn to immediately stop the negative reaction from progressing into stronger emotions that can ruin your day. So this is going to be 8 Keys of Forgiveness by Robert Enright. When another person hurts us, it upends, or it can upend our life, or certainly the day. Sometimes the hurt is very deep, such as when a spouse or a parent betrays our trust, or when we've been harshly bullied, especially for a long time or long term. You may never forget that one. And it's hard to confront it when you're a kid because you're directly from your emotional brain. And so that will continue. So that sometimes can really need some additional professional help. Anyone who suffered a grievous hurt knows that when our inner world is badly disrupted, it's difficult to concentrate on anything other than that turmoil or pain. When we hold on to hurt, we are emotionally and cognitively, our thoughts get hobbled, and our relationships suffer. And this is why with PTSD disorder, we need help to get out of our heads, to think clear on an emotional direction, to let go, to feel better. Forgiveness is strong medicine, though. When life hits us hard, there is nothing as effective as forgiveness for healing deep wounds. I would not have spent, he reports, Dr. Enright, Robert Enright, the last 30 years of his life studying forgiveness if he was not convinced of this. Many people have misperceptions about what forgiveness really is, and they may really have misunderstood it. Others may want to forgive but wonder whether or not they truly can. You can. It's a process. Forgiveness does not necessarily come easily, but it is possible for many of us to achieve it if you have the right tools and willing to put them into effect. You got to act. And we're going to go through an outline of some 8 keys to forgiveness that really you can follow this path to forgiveness, adapted from Robert Enright's book, 8 Keys to Forgiveness. And as you listen to these steps, think about how you might adapt them in your life. Know that forgiveness is what it is and why it matters to you, because there's health consequences, trust consequences, relationship consequences that will hurt you forever if you don't. It hurts you. That person may not even know that they hurt you. Forgiveness is about goodness, about extending mercy to those who harmed you, even if they don't deserve it. I think about war veterans a lot with this. And forgiveness, how do they? Whether it's their own comrades or so-called enemy. That's a tough one, and I'm telling you it's worth working on, but get help. Does any family member come to mind this Christmas as we talk about this, that you could maybe practice some of these skills on as we go through them? A person that doesn't even know maybe that harmed you or offended you, and you wouldn't fear hurting their feelings trying some of these skills on them. It is not about finding excuses for the offender's person's behaviors or pretending it didn't happen. That is not forgiveness, nor is there a quick formula you can follow. Forgiveness is a process with many steps that often proceed in a linear fashion. So they're not going to go in a straight line. Sometimes they circle back or around. You have to look at it again until you truly feel the release, feel the letting go, know that it's done. But it's worth the effort. Working on forgiveness can help us increase our self-esteem. Who doesn't want that? Feel better about yourself and give us a sense of inner strength for doing it. And safety. Now, there's an interesting one. We feel better, safer about ourselves because we can handle situations. It can reverse the lies that we often tell ourselves when somebody has hurt us deeply. Lies like, I'm not defeated, I'm not worthy. How about the statements that come out of you? I'm a victim. I can't do. They did to me. Poor me. Who wants that? Look at those. If you make any of those kinds of blaming statements, you are doing them. Forgiveness can heal us and allow us to move on in life with meaning and purpose. Forgiveness matters, and we will be the primary beneficiary. A skill you can try on that person this Christmas is to imagine him or her with a clown nose on their face every time they speak. It will change the emotional reaction you have to them and completely in that moment. Choose to see them differently, such as, oh, he's pitiful if he says stuff like that. He doesn't even know what he's talking about. He didn't even have the brains to hurt me. What was I thinking in that moment? I must have just been off that day. Interpret that situation in a different way. Or he just runs his mouth all the time and it's all gibberish. Or agree to next time say something to stick up for yourself, just for yourself. And it's really kind of important because sometimes nobody sticks up for us, and so we just kind of wilt. But like, you don't know, just say something. You don't know what you're talking about. You absolutely don't know me if you think that. Just saying anything shows you can stick up for yourself, and it can make you feel better, a little bit more empowered. Studies have shown that forgiving others produce strong psychological benefits for the one who forgives. It has been shown to decrease depression, anxiety, unhealthy anger, and the symptoms of PTSD. But we don't just forgive to help ourselves. Forgiveness can lead to psychological healing. But in its essence, it's not something about you or done to you. It is something you extend towards another person because you recognize over time that is the best response to that situation. It is a choice to forgive. Become forgivingly fit. Practice forgiveness. It helps if you have practiced or worked on positively changing your inner world by learning to what I call forgivingly fit. Just as you started slowly with new physical exercise routine, it helps if you build up your forgiving muscle, heart muscle, love muscle, slowly, incorporating regular workouts into your everyday life. You can start becoming more fit by making a commitment to do no harm. Make a conscious effort not to talk disparagingly about others who've hurt you. You don't have to say good things, but if you refrain from talking negatively, it will feed the more forgiving side of your mind and heart. You can also make a practice of recognizing that every person is unique, special, irreplaceable, and we all have issues. You may come to this through a religious belief or humanistic philosophy, or even through your belief in compassion. It's important to cultivate your mindset of valuing our common humanity so that it is harder to discount somebody who has harmed you if you look at them not with pity, but seeing they're not perfect, and don't compare yourself to them, but see them as imperfect with that clown nose on. You can show love in small ways, and every way encounters, like smiling at a harried grocery cashier, or taking time to listen to a child. Stop, listen. Giving love when it's necessary helps to build the love muscle, making it easier to show compassion towards everyone. Perhaps you can refrain from honking when somebody cuts you off in traffic, or hold your tongue when your spouse snaps at you, and extend a hug instead. Yeah, it would feel uncomfortable. That's when you know you're growing. Sometimes pride and power can weaken your efforts to forgive by making you feel entitled, inflated ego, so that you hang on to these resentments as a noble cause and you're better than, and they did it to me. Blaming the other will never get you anything but hurt. Try to catch yourself when you're acting that way and choose forgiveness or mercy instead. Or you can go to the Forgiveness Institute website, internationalforgiveness.com, and learn more. Address your inner pain. It's important to figure out who has hurt you and how. This may seem obvious, and I'm going to add when. This may seem obvious, but every action that causes you suffering, that you feel like causing you and suffering, is unjust. And if you were a child when this happened, you think about things completely differently. You don't have the same abilities of a conscious brain to figure things out. And if you re-look at some of these things, you may see that childish view, but it will become clearer, and you can carefully look at the situation. Maybe it's your parents or your siblings, peers, spouse, coworkers, children, or even yourself, and rate how much they really did hurt you. Perhaps you can maybe they exercise power over you or withheld love, or maybe they just have physically harmed you. See it more from how it hurt you, what your age was, and the way you think about it now, that you can change your thoughts to a more adult way to look at it. But these hurts probably have contributed to your inner pain and other types of pain, anger, disappointment, lack of trust. Doing this will give you an idea who needs forgiveness in your life and provide a place to start. There are many forms of emotional pain, depression, unhealthy anger, lack of trust, self-loathing, low self-esteem, and overall negative worldview. And again, these are all PTSD symptoms or lack of confidence in one's abilities to change. There's a hopelessness factor, the depression. All of these harms can be addressed by forgiveness. So it's important to identify the kind of pain you are suffering and acknowledge it. The more hurt you have incurred, the more important it is to forgive, at least for the purpose of experiencing emotional healing. You may be able to do this accounting on your own, or you may need the help of a therapist. Please reach out. However, you can approach this looking at your pain to be sure you're in an environment that feels safe and supportive. or reach out to me, and I'm happy to give you guidance where to find a therapist from your insurance company that will help pay for it, or you can become a client, or to work on that specific stumbling block only. Just to move past one, it will make the dominoes fall in other areas too, to bring you a peace of mind. Develop a forgiving mind through empathy. Scientists have studied what happens in the brain when you think, just think about forgiving, and have discovered that when people successfully imagine forgiving someone in a hypothetical situation, they showed increased activity in the neural circuits responsible for empathy. This tells me that empathy is the connection to forgiveness and is an important step in the process. If you examine some of the details in your life who have harmed you, you can often see more clearly what that wound was and start to develop empathy of compassion, seeing them as pitiful, seeing them as a clown nose on their face, seeing them as, oh my gosh, they were berating a little child. How despicable and stupid. How insecure must they be to do that? But try to imagine him even then as an innocent child that was needing love and didn't get it from their parents. And research has shown that if an infant does not receive attention and love from their primary caregiver, then he will have a weak attachment, which can damage trust. Hear that for them or for yourself. You may have been weakened also if this is a parent or a primary person in your life. It could be even a teacher. It could be a lot of Sunday school teachers. There could be a lot of different places you can get this from. But look at it straight in the face and know you're an adult now and you can deal with it. It may prevent you, though, from getting closer to others and set a trajectory of loneliness and conflict for the rest of your life, or blaming others and becoming a victim. You may be able to get an entire narrative together for the person who hurt you from early childhood to adult, or just imagine what happened to them and how bad it was. And you may be able to see their physical frailties and psychological suffering and begin to imagine, understand really the common humanity that you both may share, recognizing that we all carry wounds in our hearts that can help open the door to forgiveness. Just find meaning in your suffering. It's important that you find meaning in what you have endured. Without seeing meaning, you can lose a sense of purpose and could lead to hopelessness and despairing conclusions. Again, victimhood. Instead of seeing how suffering may have changed your way in a positive way, some people begin to think how they can use their suffering to cope better because they become more resilient or brave. They may realize that their suffering has altered their perspective regarding, compassion for others, changing their life goals for themselves. Or maybe they can see that this has really made them stronger. Not to diminish their pain or forgive that person in that sense that it was okay for what they did. But I still see there are many ways to find meaning in these sufferings. And choose it, though, to focus more on the beauty of the world, that can be a focus. You don't have to focus on the negative, and might find meaning by speaking their truth to help others and can help strengthen their resolve. And if I were to give one answer, it would be we should use our suffering to become more loving and to pass that love on to others, finding meaning in it. And of itself is helpful for finding direction to forgiveness. Forgiveness can be hard. And I've certainly, and I'm sure you have, that refused to use the word. And if you need to, because that's the spot you're in, that's okay. But if you want to forgive and finding ways, there are plenty of resources out there. And remember, if you're struggling with forgiveness and you really want to, it doesn't mean you're a failure. Forgiveness is a process and it takes time, patience, and determination. Try not to be harsh on yourself, but be gentle and foster a quiet time within and an inner acceptance. Surround yourself with good people, wise people who support you and who have the patience to allow you the time to heal. And also practice humility, not in the sense of putting yourself down, but in recognizing that we all are capable of imperfection and suffering. And try to develop courage and patience in yourself to help you on this journey. Also, if you practice bearing small slights against yourself without lashing out, maybe from your spouse, your kids, teenagers. You give a gift to everyone, especially at Christmas, not only to the other person, but to everyone whom that person even may continue to do this to, and they feel for the rest of their lives because of your anger. You can help in this cycle of inflicting pain on others by just tolerating it or saying something. If you are finding it hard to forgive yourself, you can choose to practice with someone who is easier to forgive. It can be better to focus on forgiving who's maybe not the root of your pain, but maybe somebody who's a little wasn't quite as hurtful, to start there. But by all means, forgive yourself. Most of all, we struggle with loving ourselves. That is the greatest gift you will ever give to yourself. But continue sometimes, what I see a lot of times in therapy, people will continue self-abusive statements, ways, acts that other person started that you're not forgiving. You continue it on yourself and that person is no longer doing it. It's really important to look at yourself and forgive yourself. If you're not feeling lovable because of these actions you've taken, you may need to work on self-forgiveness and offer to yourself what you offer to others who have hurt you, a sense of inherent wealth despite your actions. In self-forgiveness, you honor yourself as a person, even if you're imperfect. If you've broken your personal standards in a serious way, that is a danger of sliding into self-loathing. When this happens, you may not take good care of yourself, be self-destructive. You might overeat, oversleep, start smoking again, engaging in other forms of self-punishment, driving too fast, drinking too much. You need to recognize this as a need for more compassion for yourself. Soften your heart towards yourself. When you develop a forgiving heart, we can overcome suffering. We gain a more mature understanding of what's going on with humble courage and loving to the world. And we can create an atmosphere of forgiveness in our homes, workplace, or at Christmas time. Please, we need to look at this now more than ever to protect our communities from a cycle of hatred and violence. We're seeing that growing because nobody is speaking up as a leader to stop it and show forgiveness. We're hearing blaming. All of these choices can lighten the heart and bring joy to one's life. Some people may believe that love for another who harmed you is impossible, but I'm here to tell you, I know so many people and personally done it, that forgiveness eventually will find a way to open your heart. This kind of transformation can create a legacy of love that will live on long after you're gone, and one of the greatest gifts you can give this holiday season to yourself, your family, and to the world. Happy holidays, everyone. Really find joy in your heart and choose to share the love. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening. Please support our podcast by rating, reviewing, and subscribing. Please, to show your support. And remember to use and practice a skill we shared today to feel the joys of life. Remember, you can always call us 760-485-6784 for that free 10-minute consultation where we can discuss your next step. Or you can go to our website at anxietysimplified.net for more on how to get certified for an emotional support animal today. And remember to share the love.